All right, today we are diving headfirst into one of philosophy's most famous and maybe infamous thought experiments. It's a scenario that seems simple on the surface, but it has no easy answers, and it's designed to push our moral instincts to their absolute limit. Let's get right into it.
Okay, just take a second and actually picture this. A trolley is careening down the tracks, totally out of control. You're standing at a fork right next to a big lever. On the track ahead, 5 people are tied up. If you pull the lever, you can divert the trolley to a side track. But there's one person tied up there. So what do you do?
To really understand this gut-wrenching choice, we have to first break down the classic version of the problem and figure out what's really at stake here. So let's be super clear about the rules of the game. The trolley is out of control. You can't stop it, you can't shout to warn anyone. Your only choices are to pull that lever or do nothing. It's a closed system. 5 lives or 1. Now here's what's so fascinating. Even though the math seems like a no-brainer, say 5 people instead of 1, a lot of people hesitate, or they flat out refuse to pull the lever. Why is that? Well, because pulling that lever isn't just making a choice. It's a physical act, and that action makes you directly responsible for someone's death.
And that feeling of responsibility, it gets right to the heart of a really important ethical idea, one that guides our choices more than we even know. It's all about the difference between doing something and allowing something to happen.
In philosophical terms, yanking that lever is an act of doing. You are actively, physically causing a death. On the other hand, if you just stand there and do nothing, that's an act of allowing. You're passively letting 5 people die, sure, but you didn't cause it. The runaway trolley did. And for a lot of people, that distinction changes everything. And here it is, laid out plain and simple. Pull the lever and you become a key player in a tragedy. You did something. Do nothing, and you're just a bystander to a tragedy that was already unfolding. Psychologically, it feels a whole lot less guilty to let something bad happen than to make something bad happen, even if the result is way, way worse. Okay, but what happens when we start messing with the variables? Let's push the limits of this problem, because this is where our gut feelings really start to get tested. Let's really crank up the stakes. The situation is exactly the same, but now there aren't 5 people on the main track, there are 1,000. You can still pull that lever and divert the trolley, sacrificing only 1 person to save all of them. Suddenly, the weight of doing nothing feels a lot heavier, doesn't it? For a lot of people who said they wouldn't pull the lever before, this is the tipping point. The purely logical, greatest good for the greatest number kind of thinking starts to take over. That moral rule about not doing harm starts to crack under the massive weight of allowing such a huge catastrophe. Okay, let's reset the board. We're going to try the most famous, and for many people, the most disturbing version of this whole problem. So forget the lever. This time, you're standing on a footbridge, watching the whole thing from above. The trolley is still hurtling towards 5 people, but this time, standing right next to you, there's a very large man. And you know with 100% certainty that his body has enough mass to stop that trolley cold if you were to push him over the railing and onto the tracks below. He would die, of course, but the 5 people would be saved. Think about it. The math is identical. Sacrifice 1 life to save 5. But almost everyone who said they'd pull the lever says they would not push the man. Why? Because the action itself feels fundamentally wrong, no matter the outcome. It taps into this deep, primal rule in our heads. You don't use another human being as a tool. Pulling a lever feels impersonal, almost mechanical. Pushing a person is direct, it's violent, and it feels like a total violation of that. And now for the final twist of the knife. What if that one person on the sidetrack, or the person standing next to you on the bridge, was your mom, your child, your best friend? All that abstract math about saving the most people just goes right out the window, doesn't it? Our emotional ties, well, they almost always get the last word. So what in the world is going on inside our brains? Why are our answers so inconsistent? It turns out neuroscience gives us a pretty good clue. It's basically a battle between the rational and the emotional parts of our mind. This is so cool. Researchers actually had people think about these exact problems while they were lying inside an fMRI machine, so they could watch which parts of their brains lit up. And the results? They were incredibly revealing. So for the people who recoil at the thought of pushing the man, Their brain's emotional centers go into overdrive. It's like a big red alarm bell going off for breaking a core social rule, that deep, ugh, that's just wrong feeling. But for the people who say they would push the man, it's the parts of the brain tied to logic and cold calculation that are firing. They're essentially overriding that emotional alarm to focus on the numbers.
And here's the key takeaway from all this. For most of us, the gut feeling comes first. Our brain just screams, don't push him, because it feels wrong. And then our logical mind swoops in to build a rational-sounding argument to back it up, like talking about doing versus allowing. Turns out we're not quite the logical creatures we like to think we are. And listen, this isn't just some abstract game for philosophy class. This exact same internal fight, logic versus emotion, doing versus allowing, it plays out in very real, very high-stakes decisions that people make every single day.
Take a business leader like Mitt Romney during his time at Bain Capital. His firm would go in and restructure companies, which often meant laying off thousands of employees. When he was asked about it, his answer was basically a real-world trolley problem. He was arguing that by pulling a lever that cost, say, 10,000 jobs, he was saving the other 40,000 jobs that would have been lost if the whole company collapsed.
Or think about the incredibly tough choice a parent has to make about vaccination. Do you choose the active risk of giving your child something that has an extremely rare chance of causing harm, or do you take the passive risk of allowing them to be exposed to a potentially dangerous disease? That fear of being the one to do the harm, to be directly responsible if something goes wrong, that is a powerful, powerful motivator.
So, you see, the trolley problem was never really about trolleys. It's a tool. It's a mirror that shows us the hidden moral machinery humming away in our own minds, that constant tug-of-war between our cold, hard calculations and our deepest gut feelings.
Ultimately, there is no single correct solution to any of this. The real point of the whole exercise is what it tells you about yourself. It makes you ask, what do I value more? The best possible outcome, no matter how we get there? Or are there some lines that you just can't cross, no matter what? Knowing where you stand, well, that tells you a pretty profound truth about yourself.